now we will be hearing from Ms. Elsa White, corporate learning researcher from Learnovate, and she is joining us from Ireland. Ms. White is an experienced learning and development designer and program manager. She's passionate about the power of education and great learning design and has a strong focus on innovation, creativity, and delivering effective learner experiences. Let's all hear from Ilse.
Thank you, Elle, and thank you, Michael and Oliver as well. I really enjoyed your presentation, so really well done. I hope everybody else did as well. Let me share my screen. I'm a bit challenged in this area, so hopefully this will go well. Nice to be here, everyone. It's very early here in Ireland. Well, actually, no, it's 8:45. So I'm trying to bring the energy early in the morning, but good afternoon to you all, and thank you for having me. It's really exciting. I work as a learning experience researcher with the Learnovate Centre, which is an applied research centre for education technology in Trinity College. And as Al mentioned earlier, I have a background in instructional design in the corporate learning and development, but I've also worked quite a bit in the world of formal education recently with some of the clients that we work with. Today, I'll be sharing some insights on the following. So we'll take you way back into time and explore the relationship between humanity and learning technology. And then we'll have a conversation about how impactful learning technology is and what are some of the best practices around making decisions about learning technology. And I want to finish with a final note and reflection on some of how our center is engaging with artificial intelligence. But let's just really go back first and let's take a look at what is the fundamental relationship between humanity and learning technology. Because really, we are designed to learn, and if you look at as humans as a species, we're called Homo sapiens, right? Which is Latin for knowing man or knowing human. So to put it kind of more correctly, we are the people that learn to know. And for 3 million years, we have been creating technology that has shaped our cognition, that has enabled us to kind of transmit our social and cultural values. So we've been really creating learning technology since our very existence. And learning technology is arguably what underlies our progress as a species, because the intervention of all other technologies are kind of founded or supported by learning technology. And that goes back to the earliest days of stone tools and cave paintings to right now, the new world of the internet and artificial intelligence. So all of these kind of learning technologies have kind of supported and have helped to create our minds to help us develop the institutions that we have today, and it's really arguably the cumulative legacy of civilization. So the key point that I'm trying to make here is that when you think about it, learning technology is really fundamental for the progress of our species, which is kind of a beautiful thing. And bringing us back a little bit more to today's world, I think it's fair to say that learning technology is serving us humans and us learners well. And it's because it has these three affordances. So first of all, technology can support the learner in their personal learning process, right? Like we all know that. It can also support the educator in facilitating the learning process. And importantly as well, it can support the leader who is developing policies or around learning and education, and who is making strategic decisions to support the learning process. I think the important thing to remember here is that learning technology supports the effectiveness of learning, but the caveat is that it has to support all of these three things, and I'll get back to that in a little while. It leads us kind of to an important question as to how impactful learning technology has or is in our world. And I think over the past 2 to 3 decades, maybe, time is flying, so it might be a little bit longer, but researchers have developed a much better understanding of how people learn. And as a consequence, we're better able to kind of define why and how learning technology adds value to our learning process. And some of the kind of the benefits or the positives of technology, learning technology, I have displayed here. So it's allowing us to build interactive experiences, to build adaptable experiences. It allows us to encourage the learner to engage in open-ended learning input, and it also helps us in communicating and collaborating with each other. So these are some of the advantages of learning technology that are coming from a book called How People Learn Too, um, which I'll have referenced later on, which I really highly recommend for anybody who is interested in the science of learning and seeing how far we have come recently. So there's a lot of activity in this area and a lot of positives here. Um, and this list here is another and a reference and that's visible on the slide here, which is by the list of 10 kind of common rules that make learning technology impactful, which are devised by Donald Clark. And he says that the first five define our cultural progress. So the progress, again, that we make as a species, right? Like it can be implemented at scale, for example. We can combine different types of technology. The fifth one actually was called out to me earlier, like it gets demoted, which means that, you know, the technology is in service of the learning. It's not necessarily about technology itself. And then the second five kind of define what the quality of our learning kind of looks like. So, you know, technology enables us to implement new pedagogies, and you know, it can be good and bad. We learn as we go along, but these are kind of more focused on the cognitive potency of our learning. Um, this is all. I really recommend you to read this book because it explains all of these in a lot more detail. But it's interesting to see, you know, what it takes to make learning technology impactful for learning. And this kind of slide is very busy and overwhelming, right? But it kind of represents what we have been trying to do to make the best use of this learning technology, because we have recognized that there's a bit of potential here. And like, I'm not like, this is a very, very overwhelming picture. But there's kind of 2 points that we need to remember from this. And the first one is that we have created like a significant industry around learning technology. Like, this is just a picture for formal education. I am sure there is one somewhere that is kind of displaying all of the learning technologies that are available for corporate learning as well. So the industry is huge, and lots of people are trying to, you know, do our best to contribute to better learning. Um, and what's interesting here as well is, and this image might be a little bit small, but if you look at the top as well, you can kind of see the evolution of learning technology. Whereas, you know, at the early stages, it might have been about like gathering or sharing kind of um, knowledge, but then later on you can see that it shifts more to supporting learners, assessing learners, and right now we seem to be at the stage where we're thinking about like how can learning technology really support the skills that we need to kind of thrive in the future and in the jobs that basically we don't know what they're going to look like yet. So there's, you can see kind of the shifts happening there. Um, this is another kind of infographic that shows that kind of history of edtech, and it there's a lot on this, right? But what it does show is some of the significant shifts that are happening in the development of technology over the past 4 decades, and how that is changing in priority and has driven kind of progress and innovation in the world of learning. So in the 80s, it was much more about, you know, automation and kind of coming to terms with technology in itself. And then as the internet kind of makes an introduction and becomes more ubiquitous, you can see that the focus of learning technology is kind of shifting to what is now trying to kind of take this human-centric approach to learning that, gives us the opportunity for it to be adaptive, for it to be personalized, and for it to be really embedded in the organizational design and development so that it actually contributes to the sustainability and progress of organizations and formal education institutions. So what so it kind of leads to a question like, has all of this investment in technology and and learning and applying this and trying to come up with different ways to different technologies, has this actually had an impact on learning? And this might be a little bit controversial, but I think in a way, and what the research is suggesting, or what some of the kind of thought leaders are suggesting, it that the jury is very much out on that question. So that despite all of the promises that digital technology have held, and despite all of the investments, um, uh, uh, I'm not really sure if technology has yet lived up to its expectation. And just to kind of these quotes here are in the area of formal education, but just to highlight some of them, two of them here. Um, the first one here is an OECD report on students in computers and learning from 2015, and it concluded that a lot of the developed countries have made those big investments, but it showed that there was actually no appreciable improvement in the educational achievement, which is kind of a bitter pill to swallow here, right? So, and Daisy Christodoulou, who has done a lot of research around like the relationship between teachers and technology, is trying to shed some light on this. And she's saying that transformative education vision still needs to be founded in two realities. First, that we need to understand how human beings think and learn. And second, we need to realize that all of this happens in a much bigger context, and the reality of what schools and teachers and parents and wider society expect from education really comes to play into it. But yeah, so this is I don't know, they paint quite a bleak picture, but I don't think it's quite that black and white, but I definitely do think that there are still some questions to be asked about the impactfulness of the application of education technology, I suppose. So like I wanted to look next into looking into what makes a difference to ensure that learning technology is effective and in service of the learning, right? So it's not just about the technology, it's about how it's applied, it's about how it's being used. And in education, that might well be centered around the knowledge of the teacher. And Michael alluded to this in his talk as well. And like I love this particular model on the left here, which is called the TPAC model. And it basically argues that as an educator, as an instructor, you need to combine three types of knowledge to be able to successfully integrate technology into your teaching practice. The first one is content knowledge. So obviously you need to know about the subject that you're teaching. But also not just the subject, but you also need to have the understanding of the context of your students. What kind of backgrounds are they from? What are some of the challenges in their cultures, or what are some of the values that they have in their cultures? The second one is pedagogical knowledge, so really understanding, as Michael was saying earlier as well, what are the effective teaching or education strategies? How do you personalize that? How do you make sure that the learning experience is a positive one for everyone? And then the third one is that technological knowledge. And the reality of it is that if all of these three in an ideal world are well developed, we're laughing, right? Like everything will be really, really well. But the truth is that not every educator or teacher has all of these different types of knowledge in the same amount, nor are they supported very well at times. So there is this need for ongoing professional development and teacher training, and that's really difficult to do when there's already a lot of demands placed on teachers, and when everything around you in terms of the education system and technology is moving very fast. And So then the image here on the right kind of shows a similar kind of complex ecosystem applied to industry or the corporate world, if you like. And it kind of shows that learning technology really is one component of this bigger ecosystem of making sure that, we in organizations are learning, that we're developing, that we're gaining new knowledge. So it's, things like research come into it. Our vendors, our stakeholders. So there's a lot of players in the education space. Um, so then, with so much complexity, how do learning professionals make the right decision about what learning technology they have to use for their organization or can use for their organization? So I'm going to share a couple of lists that I believe might be helpful and kind of bring us back to the basics of thinking about like how can the technology be in service of that learning. And when it comes to making a decision, it should always be based on evidence that the technology might have a positive impact. We'll never know for sure 100%, but you need to kind of think about, what are the goals for this, for the learning and the technology that supports it. What are your learners like, and what environments do they operate in, and also how do the features of their social and cultural context play into this? What are they going through? What's happening for them at home? What priorities do they have outside of work? Um, and then the last one there as well is to really support the use of technology and for both learners but educators. Like, don't assume that they know what to do with the technology. You have to support them in using it. And to do that, like the technology really needs to be aligned with the learning goals. Again, this support needs to be in place. You have to make sure that there's equitable access to the technology as well. And we're talking about this kind of digital or technological divide. If you don't have internet access, there's, it rules out the use of a lot of learning technology. And then there is the good old elements of assessment and evaluation. And like, I know I'm going through these really quickly, but they're all critical to ensure that a particular use of technology is optimal and really achieves those identified improvements. And this involves a lot of hard and ongoing work. And I think as learning professionals, because there's a lot of pressure on us, like we tend to kind of skip over these or kind of forget a little bit about these sometimes. Um, so, but it's all well and nice and easy to say, but how does innovation in learning technology and learning and development happen? And innovations are coming thick and fast, and they might come even faster in the future. So how do we deal with that? So, I think it's good to remember that you need to get your fingers into this. You need to try it. Like, innovation and change won't happen overnight. It's an ongoing process. Like, you could see that in those kind of timelines as well. And sometimes innovation doesn't equal that, and there is a need for use of new technology. Sometimes new approaches to using older technology can work well. I mean, these still develop, maybe not all of them, but as long as the learning is considered, they might be fine. So it's important to kind of avoid the magpie trap, to kind of follow everything that's new and follow all trends approach, because maybe they don't really look like. I think the question you need to ask is, are these trends, are these new technologies, do they fit in what we already do? If so, how can we integrate them rather than just blindly kind of focusing on the next new thing? Um, and really kind of consider how this technology really fits your learning and your business strategy. So the last two things are super important as well. Is you need to start small, you need to measure constantly, you need to iterate, and you need to scale. And like, I say that like as if it's easy. It's not. This is the hard bit, because there are so many stakeholders involved, and so you need to involve them, but you also kind of need to have like a long-term view of how you implement technology, and maybe say that if it doesn't work, we're not going to continue it. Um, so I'm nearly done here, but I felt like I couldn't really talk about innovation and learning and not say anything about artificial intelligence. It's a hot topic at the moment, and a lot of talk about, how it uh, about the big promise of AI, and big advances that can be made in all sorts of industries, including learning and development. And I think it's fair that we're being cautious a little bit about AI. And there's all these kind of scary stories about how, robots are going to take over our jobs and our lives, and are we even necessary anymore? So there's a really kind of entertaining video that I've included here that I encourage you to watch. It's slightly inappropriate, but it kind of gives a really good overview of, what artificial intelligence can already do. So it might spark some inspiration. Um, but ourselves as a centre have decided to get our fingers into the area of artificial intelligence, and have started a number of research projects around generative AI in particular, and how it relates to learning in the areas of authentic assessment, point of need learning, and AI and metacognition, and how AI can improve learning through natural language-based learner interactions. So we're at the very start of these, where we've just published a couple of short reports on these. So if you're curious about them, reach out, and I can tell you more about it. But hopefully I can come back here next year and give you some more progress of where we are with those. So with that, I will say thank you for your attention, and I'll hand you back to Elle.